The social aspect of food was also tied to its flavor. Feasts, rare and celebrated events, were when the wealthy might showcase their access to more exotic ingredients, while commoners wouldn't experience the full range of imported spices. Even a small amount of a rare herb or a particularly well-preserved piece of meat might elevate a communal meal, making it a memorable occasion. These were moments when the monotony was briefly broken, when the palate was offered a fleeting glimpse of something more. Here's a light joke to break the tension. Why did the medieval onion get invited to all the parties? Because it knew how to make everyone cry. With joy, of course. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time when your average dinner wasn't just missing a dash of hot sauce, but probably a whole lot more. We're going to explore the culinary landscape of the Dark Ages, roughly from the fall of the Roman Empire to about the year 1000 AD, and discover what people used to spice up their meals in a world utterly devoid of supermarkets, global supply chains, or even a basic understanding of what a balanced diet truly meant. Imagine, if you will, the flickering light of a tallow candle casting long shadows across a rough-hewn wooden table. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, damp earth, and something simmering in a cauldron over the hearth. Leeks, with their milder, more delicate onion-like flavor, were also a staple. They are often used in soups and stews, providing a gentle sweetness and a subtle green freshness. You might see leeks growing in your garden, their long white stalks and green leaves a welcome sight. They are less pungent than onions or garlic, making them ideal for dishes where a more subtle allium flavor is desired, or for adding bulk to vegetarian meals during fast days. You sit down, your stomach rumbling with a familiar, persistent ache. Before you is a bowl of pottage, a thick, gruel-like stew that forms the cornerstone of almost every meal. It's made from whatever grains are available, perhaps oats, barley, or a coarse rye, boiled with dried peas or beans, and maybe a few root vegetables if it's the right season. The color is a muted, earthy brown, and the texture is, well, filling. But as you bring a spoonful to your lips, you notice something. It's bland. Not just needs a little salt, bland, but a profound, almost philosophical blandness. This isn't the gentle pang of missing your favorite exotic takeout. This is the deep, ancestral longing for flavor, for something, anything, to awaken your weary palate. The beauty of these three ingredients lies in their ability to layer flavor. An initial sauté of onions, followed by garlic. Then the addition of leeks creates a complex aromatic base that elevates even the simplest of dishes. They are the unsung heroes of medieval cuisine, providing the savory depth that global spices would later offer. Without them, your meals would be truly, profoundly bland. Because, you see, for most people in the Dark Ages, food was primarily about sustenance. It was fuel for the relentless labor of survival, not a source of culinary delight. The concept of gourmet was as alien as a flying machine. And, let me tell you, if you were plucked from your cozy, flavor-filled home and dropped into this reality, your taste buds would probably go on strike faster than you could say umami. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? An obscure detail about medieval alliums. While we think of specific varieties today, medieval onions and garlic were often wilder, more varied, and perhaps less uniform in size and pungency. There was less selective breeding, meaning a greater diversity of flavors and strengths. You might encounter an onion that is surprisingly sweet, or a clove of garlic that packs an unexpectedly fiery punch, adding an element of surprise to your cooking. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Historians still debate the extent to which the strong flavors of onions, garlic, and leeks were used to mask the taste of less than fresh meat or fish. While they certainly helped to make preserved foods more palatable, it's also clear that their inherent savory qualities were appreciated for their own sake, forming the backbone of many regional culinary traditions. You take another spoonful of the pottage, and the lack of distinct flavor is almost startling. In your modern world, you have access to a dizzying array of spices from every corner of the globe. Fiery chilies from the Americas, pungent ginger from Asia, fragrant cinnamon from distant islands. You can walk into any grocery store and find shelves overflowing with jars of vibrant powders and aromatic seeds. Now, strip all that away. Imagine your spice rack is, well, it's not really a rack at all. It's more like a few dusty pouches containing very basic, very local additions. Here's another joke. My medieval friend said he was feeling a bit garlicky. I told him he probably just needed more pottage with extra garlic. The fundamental reality of the Dark Ages was one of limited trade and even more limited access. The vast, interconnected trade routes of the Roman Empire had largely collapsed, while some luxury goods, including highly prized spices, still trickled in from the east. They were astronomically expensive, reserved almost exclusively for the very wealthiest nobles, powerful church officials, or the occasional intrepid merchant. For the vast majority of the population, the peasants, the farmers, the humble villagers, imported spices were simply an unimaginable fantasy. The versatility of these alliums extended beyond just stews. Onions could be roasted whole in the embers of the fire, their sweetness intensifying, becoming a simple but satisfying side dish. Garlic might be pounded into a paste and mixed with herbs to create a rudimentary sauce for bread. Leeks could be boiled and served simply with a drizzle of vinegar, a rare moment of fresh, clean flavor. So, if you couldn't get black pepper from India or cloves from Indonesia, what did you use? The answer lies in what was locally available, what could be grown in your small garden plot, or what could be gathered from the surrounding wild. Your spice cabinet was, in essence, your immediate environment. This meant a heavy reliance on ingredients that provided more than just flavor. They also offered bulk, calories, or even medicinal properties. Their robust nature also made them excellent for storage. Onions and garlic, when properly dried and stored in a cool, dark place, could last for many months, providing essential flavor through the long winter. Leeks, while less long-lasting, could often be left in the ground and harvested as needed, even through light frosts, providing a continuous supply of fresh greens. This reliability made them invaluable. Think about the most basic enhancer of all salt. We'll delve deeper into salt later, but for now, understand that it was not just a preservative. As we discussed in our last journey, it was the primary seasoning, It brought out the inherent flavors of food, masked unpleasant ones, especially in preserved meats, and was absolutely essential for making bland staples palatable. Without salt, your pottage would be utterly uninspiring. With it, it at least had some character, even if that character was just salty. The pungent aromas of these oleums were not just confined to the kitchen. They permeated the air of medieval homes, clinging to clothes and hair. To a modern nose, this might seem overwhelming, but to a medieval person, it was the comforting scent of a well-fed household, a sign of sustenance and warmth. It was the smell of life. Beyond salt, your options broadened slightly, but still remained firmly rooted in your immediate surroundings. Herbs were your first line of defense against blandness. Imagine your small garden patch, nestled beside your hut. It's not just for vegetables. It's your personal apothecary and flavor factory. Here, you would cultivate hardy, resilient herbs that could survive the often harsh climate. A third joke for you. My medieval cooking show was called Chopping Onions, A Tearful Journey to Flavor. You might see patches of wild garlic, its pungent leaves and bulbs offering a sharp, onion-like bite. This wasn't the refined garlic you know, but a wilder, often stronger variety. It would be chopped and added to stews, rubbed on meats, or even eaten raw for its perceived health benefits. Its strong flavor was a welcome contrast to the prevailing blandness. The cultivation of onions, garlic, and leeks was a fundamental part of medieval agriculture. Every peasant garden would have dedicated rows for these plants, nurtured with care. The knowledge of how to grow them, how to harvest them, and how to store them was passed down through generations, a vital piece of domestic wisdom. They were not just ingredients. They were a form of food security, a guarantee of flavor even when other resources were scarce. Then there are the common garden herbs, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. These weren't just pretty plants. They were vital flavor enhancers. Parsley, with its fresh green notes, could brighten up a heavy stew. Sage, with its earthy, slightly peppery flavor, was often paired with fatty meats like pork. Rosemary, with its piney aroma, might be used with roasted fowl or even in bread. Thyme, with its subtle, savory notes, was versatile, finding its way into many dishes. You would harvest these herbs in summer, drying them carefully to preserve their flavor for the long winter months. Imagine the bundles of dried herbs hanging from the rafters of your hut, their faint scent a promise of future meals. As you finish your meal, the lingering warmth of cooked onions and garlic on your tongue. You appreciate the profound simplicity and effectiveness of these humble bulbs. They are not glamorous, not exotic, but they are the true heroes of medieval flavor. They provided the essential savory base, the pungent kick, and the comforting aroma that transformed a monotonous diet into something bearable, something that sustained life. And as you drift off, you might imagine the earthy, pungent scent of onions, garlic, and leeks, the basic, vital flavors that spiced up the Dark Ages. A light joke to break the tension. My medieval neighbor once tried to impress me with his exotic spice collection. It was just a really old bunch of dried parsley. You've explored the savory depths provided by onions, garlic, and leeks, the foundational flavors that anchor your medieval meals. Now, as you consider the full spectrum of taste, your thoughts turn to something far rarer, far more precious in your Dark Ages world sweetness. This isn't the ubiquitous sugar of your modern pantry. This is the subtle, often fleeting, and intensely valued sweetness of honey and the seasonal delight of fruit, a rare indulgence that truly spices up your otherwise austere diet. The use of herbs wasn't just about taste. Many herbs were also valued for their medicinal properties. Sage, for instance, was believed to aid digestion. Thyme was used for respiratory ailments. This dual purpose meant that cultivating herbs was an essential part of household management, providing both flavor and a rudimentary form of health care. You might see your mother or grandmother carefully grinding dried herbs with a mortar and pestle, not just for cooking, but for making poultices or infusions. Imagine the gentle hum of bees on a warm summer day, a sound that promises a golden treasure. Beekeeping is a skilled and often dangerous endeavor. You might see a beekeeper, clad in protective layers, carefully approaching a hive. The air thick with the buzzing of thousands of insects. The honey, once harvested, is a miracle of nature, a thick, viscous liquid, shimmering with amber and gold, smelling faintly of wildflowers and sunshine. This isn't just a sweetener. It's a concentrated source of energy, a natural preservative, and a rare burst of pure, unadulterated sweetness, an obscure detail about dark ages, flavoring while true spices were rare. Some regional substitutes were developed. For example, in parts of Europe where ginger was unknown or too expensive, people might use the root of galangal, a related plant with a similar pungent, peppery taste, if it could be cultivated or traded locally, or in some areas, the seeds of certain wild plants, like wild caraway or fennel, might be gathered and used for their aromatic properties, providing a hint of something more exotic to otherwise simple dishes. Honey is your primary source of sweetness in the Dark Ages, long before sugarcane became widely cultivated and accessible in Europe. Its value is immense. It's often used as a form of currency, a valuable trade commodity, and a prized gift. You might have a small pot of honey, carefully guarded, reserved for special occasions or for medicinal purposes. A spoonful of honey in your mouth is a revelation, a rich, floral sweetness that lingers, a stark contrast to the salty, earthy, and sour flavors that dominate your daily meals. Historians still debate the extent to which the darkness of the Dark Ages truly meant a complete lack of culinary sophistication. While trade certainly declined, archaeological finds and textual evidence suggest that some regional culinary traditions persisted, and local ingredients were used with surprising creativity. However, the overall picture for the common person remains one of necessity driving flavor choices, rather than luxury. You might use honey sparingly to sweeten a gruel on a feast day, or to make a simple, comforting drink. It's not something you add liberally to every dish. It's a precious commodity, used with reverence. Imagine a rare treat, a piece of coarse bread, perhaps lightly toasted over the fire, with a thin smear of honey. This simple pleasure is a moment of pure bliss, a taste of luxury in a world of scarcity. Here's another joke. My medieval cookbook had a section called Exotic Flavors. It was just a blank page. A common historical fact is that honey was not only the primary sweetener, but also a crucial ingredient in medieval medicine. It was used for treating wounds, soothing coughs, and as a general tonic, due to its natural antimicrobial properties. Its value extended far beyond the culinary. making it an even more precious commodity. You understand that your small pot of honey is both a treat for your palate and a potential remedy for illness. Beyond herbs, other locally grown or gathered ingredients provided flavor and texture. Onions, leeks, and garlic, as mentioned, were fundamental. These alliums provided a pungent, savory base for almost every dish. You'd chop them roughly, their sharp aroma filling the air, and add them to your pottage, your stews, and even your simple bread. Their strong flavors were essential for masking the often bland taste of preserved meats or the earthy notes of root vegetables. Here's a light joke to break the tension. Why did the medieval bee get a promotion? Because it was always honey-sat with its work. Wild edibles, beyond just sustenance, also offered flavor. Nettles, when cooked, have an earthy, spinach-like taste. Wild garlic, as noted, is intensely pungent. Even certain tree barks, in desperate times, might be used, though their flavor was often bitter and unpleasant. The forest, for those who knew its secrets, was not just a larder, but a subtle spice rack, offering fleeting moments of unique flavor. Beyond honey, fruit provides another, albeit seasonal and often fleeting, source of sweetness. In summer and early autumn, your garden and the surrounding wild offer a bounty of apples, pears, plums, cherries, and various berries. These are consumed fresh, quickly, as they spoil rapidly. The taste of a ripe apple, crisp and sweet, or a handful of juicy berries, is a fleeting delight, a reminder of nature's generosity. The concept of spicing up a meal in the Dark Ages was less about adding a complex symphony of flavors, and more about providing a strong, singular note to break the monotony. It was about creating contrast, about making the food palatable enough to consume, rather than a gourmet experience. Your palate, accustomed to these simple, robust flavors, would likely find modern cuisine overwhelmingly complex, perhaps even confusing, to extend their availability. Some fruits might be dried, as you recall from our previous journey. Dried apples or plums become chewy and intensely sweet, their sugars concentrated by the removal of water. These dried fruits, while not as vibrant as their fresh counterparts, provide a crucial source of sweetness and some vitamins during the lean winter months. You might chew on a dried apple, its concentrated sweetness a welcome change from the savory monotony. A third joke for you. My medieval friend said he was going to open a fusion restaurant. His menu was pottage with a hint of more pottage. An obscure detail about medieval fruit consumption is the widespread use of crab apples and other wild, sour varieties. While cultivated apples existed, wild and semi-wild varieties were very common and often too tart to eat raw. These were frequently used for making cider, verjuice, as we discussed, or cooked down with honey or other sweeteners to make sauces or preserves. This highlights that fruit wasn't always a sweet, ready-to-eat treat, but often required processing to be palatable. As you finish your pottage, the lingering taste of salt and dried herbs on your tongue, you reflect on the ingenuity of your ancestors. Without the vast global network of trade, without the scientific understanding of flavor compounds, they made do with what they had. They coaxed flavor from the earth, from the wild, and from the simple act of preservation. Their meals might have been humble, their palates less refined by modern standards, but they found ways to add character, to break the monotony, and to make their daily sustenance not just bearable, but a testament to human resilience. Historians still debate the exact accessibility of fruit for the common peasant. While wild fruits were generally available, cultivated orchards might have been limited to larger estates or monasteries. Did the average peasant have regular access to sweet, ripe fruit, or was it primarily sour? Wild varieties that required significant processing. The answer likely varies by region and social status. But fresh, sweet fruit was certainly not a daily staple for most. You've experienced the pervasive, life-giving power of salt, the fundamental seasoning that anchored every meal in the Dark Ages. Now, as you step out of the bustling salt market, the lingering brininess on your tongue, your attention turns to a more subtle, yet equally vital, source of flavor, the herbs from your garden. These aren't the exotic, far-flung spices of distant lands, but the familiar, fragrant plants that grow just outside your door, offering a comforting aroma and a much-needed lift to your humble fare. Here's another joke. My medieval fruit salad was pretty simple. 1 apple, if I was lucky, and a whole lot of hope. Imagine your small garden plot, a patch of cultivated earth, nestled close to your wattle and daub hut. It's not just for growing basic vegetables like cabbage and root crops. It's your personal apothecary and, more importantly, your local spice rack. Here, you meticulously tend to hardy, resilient herbs that can withstand the often harsh climate and provide flavor year-round, either fresh in summer or dried for winter. The soil beneath your fingernails, the scent of damp earth mingling with the green, herbaceous aromas. This is where your culinary creativity, limited as it is, truly begins. Sometimes, fruits were preserved in honey, though this was a luxury. Small, delicate berries might be submerged in jars of honey, their sweetness infused into the fruit, creating a truly exquisite, if expensive, treat. This method, while effective, was reserved for the wealthiest households or for very special occasions, a testament to the combined value of both honey and fruit. You kneel, carefully examining the plants. There's the vibrant green of parsley, its frilly leaves promising a fresh, clean note. Its taste is mild, slightly peppery, and incredibly versatile. You chop it finely and scatter it over your pottage just before serving, not for deep flavor, but for a burst of freshness and a touch of color that brightens the otherwise monochromatic meal. It's a simple addition, but one that signals care and a fleeting connection to the summer's bounty. The taste of sweetness, whether from honey or fruit, was a powerful contrast to the prevailing savory, salty, and earthy flavors of the medieval diet. It provided a moment of pure pleasure, a sensory escape from the daily grind. It was a reminder that food could be more than just sustenance. It could be a source of joy, albeit a rare one. Then there's sage, with its dusty green, slightly fuzzy leaves. Its aroma is earthy, savory, and a little strong, almost medicinal. Sage is a powerful herb, often paired with richer, fattier meats like pork or goose, if you were fortunate enough to have them. It helps to cut through the richness and adds a depth of flavor that is both comforting and robust. You might rub dried sage onto a piece of preserved meat before boiling it, hoping to infuse it with a hint of something more palatable. The cultivation of fruit trees was a long-term investment. An apple tree might take years to bear fruit, and its yield could be unpredictable. This made fruit a valuable, but often unreliable, source of food and sweetness. You might tend to a young fruit tree in your garden, knowing that its future bounty is a gift for generations to come. Rosemary, with its needle-like leaves and resinous, piney scent, is another staple. Its flavor is strong and aromatic, making it ideal for roasting meats or adding to hearty stews. Imagine the scent of rosemary wafting from a fire as a piece of meat slowly cooks, a primal aroma that signals a substantial meal. Thyme, with its tiny leaves and subtle, earthy, slightly floral notes, is incredibly versatile. It can be used in almost any savory dish, from pottage to bread, adding a foundational savory depth without overpowering other flavors. A third joke for you. My medieval dessert menu had two options: honey or more honey. A common historical fact is that medieval gardens, even those of common peasants, almost always included a dedicated section for culinary and medicinal herbs. These plants were not just for flavor, they were essential for health, believed to cure ailments, aid digestion, and even ward off evil spirits. The line between food and medicine was often blurred, and your garden was your first line of defense against both hunger and illness. The limited availability of sweetness also meant that medieval palates were likely far more attuned to subtle sweet notes in foods that we might consider savory today. The natural sweetness of cooked onions, carrots, or even certain grains would have been more noticeable and appreciated in a diet largely devoid of refined sugars. This highlights how your taste buds adapt to your environment, finding pleasure in what is available. Here's a light joke to lighten the mood. My medieval neighbor said his favorite herb was whatever didn't get eaten by the goats. Very practical. As you drift off, you might imagine the golden glow of honey, the vibrant colors of ripe berries, and the crisp bite of a fresh apple. These are the rare, precious moments of sweetness that punctuate the otherwise demanding culinary landscape of the Dark Ages. They are not common, not taken for granted, but when they appear, they truly spice up your meals, providing a fleeting but unforgettable taste of pure delight. The process of preserving these herbs for winter is as important as growing them. As summer wanes, you carefully harvest the herbs, tying them into small bundles and hanging them upside down from the rafters of your hut, or in a dry, airy shed. You watch as they slowly dry, their vibrant colors fading to muted greens and browns, but their essential oils and flavors becoming more concentrated. The air in your home takes on a faint, comforting herbal aroma, a reminder of the summer's warmth and a promise of flavor for the cold months ahead. You've savored the rare sweetness of honey and fruit, a fleeting delight in your Dark Ages world. You've come to appreciate the humble yet vital flavors of local herbs, onions, garlic, and the sharp tang of vinegar. But now, as your imagination stretches beyond the familiar confines of your village, you glimpse a world of flavor that is almost mythical, a realm of exotic aromas and vibrant tastes that, for most, remain an unattainable fantasy imported spices, the true luxuries of the medieval table. When winter arrives, these dried herbs become invaluable. You might crumble them directly into your pottage, or grind them with a mortar and pestle to release their full aroma. The act of grinding, the release of those concentrated scents, is a small ritual that brings a moment of sensory pleasure to the otherwise monotonous task of preparing food. Imagine, for a moment, that you are not a peasant, but a wealthy lord or a powerful abbot. You are seated at a grand table, perhaps in a stone hall, the air filled with the murmur of voices and the faint scent of beeswax candles. Before you, a feast is laid out, far more elaborate than your daily pottage. And amidst the roasted meats and fine breads, you catch a whiff of something truly extraordinary, something that transports you to distant lands, the pungent warmth of black pepper, the sweet, earthy aroma of cinnamon, the exotic perfume of cloves, an obscure detail about Dark Ages herbs. While many herbs were cultivated, some were also gathered wild from the surrounding countryside, especially those that were difficult to grow in a garden setting or preferred specific wild habitats. For example, wild marjoram, a close relative of oregano, might be found in sunny, rocky areas, and its strong, pungent flavor would be highly prized. This blending of cultivated and wild herbs provided a broader, albeit still limited, palette of flavors. These are the true spices, as you understand them today, but in the Dark Ages, they were more precious than gold. They traveled vast distances from the far reaches of Asia and Africa, across treacherous seas and dangerous land routes, through countless hands, each adding to their exorbitant cost. The journey of a single peppercorn from India to your Lord's table was an epic odyssey, fraught with peril and demanding immense resources. Historians still debate the precise culinary impact of these herbs. While they undoubtedly provided flavor, some scholars argue that the strong, often bitter taste of certain medieval herbs, combined with rudimentary cooking methods, meant that the overall flavor profile was still quite different from what we consider palatable today. Others suggest that the medieval palate was simply accustomed to these robust flavors, finding them comforting and satisfying. Black pepper, in particular, was the king of spices. Its sharp, pungent heat was highly prized, a bold contrast to the often bland or heavily salted local fare. You might see a small, carefully guarded pouch of peppercorns, each one a tiny, wrinkled treasure. For the wealthy, it was a status symbol, a clear indicator of their immense wealth and their connection to the wider world. Imagine the subtle crunch of a peppercorn as you bite into a piece of roasted meat, its fiery burst awakening your palate in a way no local herb ever could. Here's another joke. My medieval friend tried to make a spicy dish. He added an extra sprig of thyme. It was wild. Cinnamon, with its warm, sweet, woody aroma, was another highly coveted spice. It came from distant lands. Its delicate bark rolled into quills, promising an almost magical sweetness and fragrance. It was used in both savory and sweet dishes, often paired with roasted meats, in rich sauces, or even in spiced wines. Imagine the comforting, aromatic steam rising from a dish seasoned with cinnamon, a scent that speaks of luxury and faraway lands. Beyond the common culinary herbs, other plants were used for their aromatic properties. Fennel, with its licorice-like flavor, might be found both wild and cultivated. Its seeds used to flavor bread or stews. Caraway seeds, with their distinctive earthy, slightly peppery taste, were also popular, often added to bread, cheese, or cabbage dishes. These seeds, easily dried and stored, provided a burst of concentrated flavor that was particularly welcome in winter. A common historical fact is that during the Dark Ages, the availability of imported spices was severely limited due to the decline of Roman trade networks and the rise of new political and economic structures. While some trade persisted, it was often sporadic and dangerous, making spices incredibly rare and expensive, accessible only to the very elite. You understand that these spices are not for you. They are for those who command wealth and power. The use of these herbs and seeds wasn't just about masking the blandness of staples or the strong flavors of preserved meats. They also provided a sense of connection to the seasons, a reminder of the vibrant life of summer even in the dead of winter. Each pinch of dried thyme or sprinkle of caraway seeds was a little piece of the sun-drenched fields brought to your winter table. Here's a light joke to break the tension. My medieval lord's spice rack was so exclusive, it had its own bodyguard, and the bodyguard only ate pottage. The knowledge of which herbs to use, how to grow them, and how to preserve them was passed down through generations, often from mother to daughter. It was a practical, essential skill, a part of the domestic economy that ensured the family's well-being. You learned early on to identify the plants, to understand their properties, and to use them wisely. Cloves, with their strong, sweet, and slightly pungent aroma, were another exotic delight. They were often used to stud roasted meats, particularly pork or game, or added to spiced drinks. Their intense flavor could transform a simple dish into a rich, aromatic experience. Nutmeg and mace, derived from the same fruit, offered warm, woody, and slightly sweet notes, often grated fresh over dishes or added to custards and sauces. Imagine the rich, complex aroma of a dish infused with cloves and nutmeg, a true sensory indulgence. A third joke for you. My medieval cooking class was very exclusive. You had to know how to identify edible weeds just to get in. Ginger, both fresh and dried, provided a pungent, zesty heat. It was used in a variety of dishes, from savory stews to medicinal concoctions. Its ability to add a sharp, spicy kick made it a valuable addition to the limited flavor palette. You might hear tales of merchants returning from distant lands, their ships laden with these precious commodities, their stories as exotic as the spices themselves. The limited access to true spices from afar meant that the local herbs took on an outsized importance. They were your primary tools for culinary expression, for adding character and depth to meals that were otherwise defined by their basic ingredients. While a noble might boast of his pepper and cinnamon, you found satisfaction in the familiar, comforting notes of sage and thyme from your own garden. An obscure detail about Dark Ages spices is the use of grains of paradise, Aframomum meligueta. This West African spice, a relative of ginger, offered a peppery, slightly citrusy, and cardamom-like flavor. While less famous than black pepper, it was imported into Europe and used as a substitute or complement, especially when black pepper was particularly scarce or expensive. Its presence in some archaeological finds suggests a more diverse spice trade than often assumed for the period. As you finish your meal, the subtle, lingering scent of dried herbs on your tongue, you reflect on the quiet ingenuity of your ancestors. They didn't need vast empires or global trade routes to find flavor. They found it in the earth beneath their feet, in the plants that grew around them, and in the timeless knowledge passed down through generations. These humble herbs, cultivated with care and preserved with diligence, were your true spices, transforming the mundane into something just a little more bearable, a little more palatable, a little more like home. Historians still debate the primary motivation behind the medieval elite's desire for imported spices. Was it purely for flavor, to mask the taste of less than fresh food, or primarily as a display of wealth and status? While all these factors likely played a role, the sheer cost and difficulty of acquiring them suggest that their symbolic value was immense, signaling power and prestige to guests and rivals alike. You've nurtured your garden, harvesting its humble herbs to bring a touch of familiar flavor to your daily fare. But as the seasons turn and the cultivated patch yields less, your gaze inevitably shifts beyond the fence, beyond the familiar paths, and into the wild. This is where a different kind of spice rack awaits, one built not by human hands, but by nature itself, the deep forest and untamed fields, offering wild edibles that, while often challenging to find and prepare, provide unique and sometimes vital flavors. Here's another joke. My medieval noble friend said he was going on a spice run. I thought he meant he was going to jog to the next village for some dried parsley. Imagine stepping out on a crisp autumn morning, the air sharp with the scent of decaying leaves and damp earth. You're not heading to the fields for harvest, but deeper towards the ancient woods that fringe your village. Your basket is empty, but your mind is full of knowledge passed down through generations, the knowledge of what to seek, and, crucially, what to avoid. Foraging in the wild is not a casual stroll. It's a serious endeavor, fraught with both opportunity and danger. The journey of these spices was perilous. They traveled along the Silk Road, through deserts and mountains, facing bandits, harsh weather, and political instability. They were transported by sea, across vast oceans, vulnerable to storms and pirates. Each leg of the journey added to their cost and their mystique. By the time they reached European markets, their price was astronomical, making them accessible only to the very top echelons of society. Your first targets might be wild onions or garlic, often found in damp, shaded areas. These aren't the plump, cultivated varieties you might know, but smaller, more pungent bulbs and leaves. Their sharp, biting flavor is a welcome contrast to the blandness of your staple diet. You'd dig them carefully from the soil, their strong aroma clinging to your fingers, knowing that even a small handful can elevate a pot of pottage from merely filling to genuinely flavorful. They provide a foundational savory note, a primal kick that awakens the senses for the common person. These spices remained a distant dream. You might hear whispers of them, stories told by traveling merchants or returning crusaders, but you would never taste them. Your spices were the herbs from your garden, the salt from the local mine, and the pungent alliums that formed the base of your daily meals. The concept of adding a pinch of cinnamon to your pottage would be utterly absurd, a waste of unimaginable wealth. As you venture deeper, you might spot patches of wild nettles. These stinging plants, while intimidating, are a valuable source of green, earthy flavor when cooked. You'd carefully gather them, perhaps with gloved hands or a thick cloth, knowing that boiling them thoroughly removes their sting and transforms them into a nutritious, spinach-like addition to soups and stews. Their slightly bitter, mineral-rich taste adds a depth that cultivated greens often lack, a true taste of the untamed land. The impact of these spices on the cuisine of the wealthy was transformative. They allowed for a far greater range of flavors and culinary sophistication. Dishes could be sweet and savory, hot and aromatic, complex and intriguing. They were used not just to season, but to create entirely new flavor profiles, marking a clear distinction between the humble fare of the commoner and the elaborate banquets of the elite. A common historical fact is that wild foraging was a crucial supplementary activity for medieval peasants, especially during periods of scarcity or when cultivated crops failed. Common lands, forests, and uncultivated areas provided a vital safety net, offering a diverse range of edibles that could mean the difference between survival and starvation. You understand this instinctively. The forest is both a provider and a silent judge of your ingenuity. A third joke for you. My medieval noble's favorite game was Guess the Spice. The answer was always pepper, but he still acted surprised. Here's a light joke to break the tension. My medieval foraging trip was so exciting, I almost stepped on a very grumpy mushroom. It told me to get off its lawn. The desire for these imported spices would eventually drive exploration and trade in later centuries, leading to the Age of Discovery. The quest for direct access to the spice lands was a powerful economic motivator that reshaped global geography and commerce. But in the Dark Ages, that future was still centuries away. The spices remained rare, precious, and shrouded in an aura of exoticism. Beyond the more obvious greens, you might be searching for wild berries and fruits that have escaped the birds and early frosts. Hawthorns, rose hips, and sloes. Wild plums are often found in hedgerows and forest edges. These are typically tart, astringent, and often small, but they offer a rare burst of sweetness or sourness, a fleeting taste of summer's bounty. Rose hips, in particular, are valued for their high vitamin C content, a crucial defense against scurvy during the long winter. You might dry them, or even make a simple syrup, preserving their precious flavor and nutrients. As you drift off, you might imagine the faint, intoxicating aroma of faraway spices, the warmth of cinnamon, the bite of pepper, the sweetness of cloves. These are the flavors of a distant world, a world of wealth and luxury that exists far beyond your humble hut. They are the ultimate spice, not just for meals, but for the imagination, a tantalizing glimpse of what culinary delight could be, even if it remains forever out of reach. Nuts are another prized find. Wild hazelnuts, beech nuts, and even acorns, though acorns require extensive processing to remove their bitterness, are rich in fat and calories, providing much-needed energy. You'd spend hours meticulously gathering them, cracking them open with a stone, each nut a tiny, delicious victory. Their earthy, slightly sweet flavor is a welcome addition to a monotonous diet, a taste of the forest's hidden generosity. You've witnessed the dazzling, yet unattainable world of imported spices, a realm of luxury far beyond your daily grasp. You understand that for the vast majority in the Dark Ages, these exotic flavors were mere whispers, dreams of distant lands. Now, as you turn your attention back to the more tangible realities of your medieval life, you consider two other crucial elements that added richness and depth to your meals, not just as ingredients, but as transformative agents, the comforting richness of rendered fat and the pervasive, often smoky, embrace of fire. An obscure detail about Dark Ages wild flavors is the use of certain tree barks and inner cambium layers, particularly from birch or pine trees, as a famine food or a way to extend flour supplies. While not truly flavorful in a pleasant sense, and certainly not nutritious in large quantities, these fibrous materials could be dried, ground into a coarse powder, and mixed with meager grain flour to create a bulkier, if less palatable, bread. This was a desperate measure, a taste of sheer survival, often bitter and difficult to digest, but a testament to how far people would go to avoid starvation. You might have heard hushed tales of families resorting to such extreme measures during particularly harsh winters. Imagine your kitchen, not as a pristine culinary space, but as a working hearth, the heart of your home. A large cauldron hangs over the open flame, and within it, something is rendering. Perhaps it's the fat from a recently butchered pig, slowly melting down into a shimmering, clear liquid. This isn't just about cooking. It's about creating flavor and preserving food in a way that is deeply intertwined with the very act of eating. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval people understood the toxicity of certain wild plants. While practical knowledge was passed down, accidental poisonings were undoubtedly a risk. Did they rely solely on empirical knowledge, or were there more systematic ways of identifying safe edibles? The answer likely lies in a combination of communal wisdom, trial and error, and a healthy dose of caution. Rendered fat, whether it's lard from pigs or tallow from cattle or sheep, was far more than just a cooking medium. It was a flavor enhancer, a source of vital calories, and, as you recall from our earlier journey, a powerful preservative. Its rich, savory essence permeated every dish it touched. You might see a cook adding a generous spoonful of solidified lard to a pot of simmering pottage, and immediately the texture and flavor transform. The pottage becomes smoother, richer, more satisfying, its blandness softened by the comforting unctuousness of the fat. Here's another joke. My medieval foraging guide had a scratch and sniff section. It mostly smelled like dirt and desperation. This richness wasn't just about taste. It was about energy. In a world of constant physical labor and often insufficient calories, fat was a prized commodity. It provided sustained energy, helping you endure long days in the fields or through the cold nights. The flavor it imparted was a deep, satisfying, savory note, a fundamental taste that was appreciated for its own sake, not just as a vehicle for other ingredients. Mushrooms, as mentioned before, are a double-edged sword. The forest floor teems with them after a good rain, offering a wide array of flavors and textures, from earthy bolates to delicate chanterelles. But the risk of misidentification is ever present. One wrong choice could lead to agonizing illness or death. You rely on the precise knowledge of your elders, on the distinct features of edible varieties, and on a healthy dose of superstition. A successful mushroom hunt, however, can provide a rare and welcome umami depth to your pottage, a savory richness that is otherwise hard to come by. A common historical fact is that animal fats were the primary cooking fats in medieval Europe, far more common than vegetable oils, which were often expensive or regionally limited. Every part of a butchered animal was used, and rendering fat was a crucial process to ensure nothing went to waste, providing both a cooking medium and a valuable preservative. You understand that the fat from your animals is as important as their meat. Wild greens, beyond nettles, also provided flavor. Dandelions, chickweed, and various wild mustards could be gathered, especially in early spring, offering a fresh, often peppery or slightly bitter taste. These were quickly consumed, providing a much-needed burst of vitamins and a welcome change from the preserved foods of winter. Their sharp, vibrant flavors were a stark reminder of the returning life to the land. Here's a light joke to break the tension. My medieval diet was so high in fat. My clothes started to develop their own sheen, very fashionable, actually. The process of preparing these wild foods often involved simple cooking methods: boiling, roasting over an open fire, or adding them to stews. The goal was to make them palatable and digestible, to extract their nutrients and flavors. The taste of these wild edibles is often more intense, more raw than cultivated foods, reflecting their untamed origin. It's a taste that connects you directly to the land, to the ancient rhythms of foraging, beyond simply adding fat to dishes. The process of cooking over an open fire imparted its own distinctive flavor. Every meal you eat, from the simplest boiled pottage to a rare roasted fowl, carries the subtle, smoky essence of the hearth. The crackling flames, the glowing embers, the direct contact with the heat. These elements infuse your food with a primal, comforting taste that is unique to this era. A third joke for you. My medieval diet was so farm to table. I had to wrestle the table for my dinner. Imagine a piece of meat slowly roasting on a spit over the open fire. The fat drips, sizzling into the flames, creating plumes of aromatic smoke that cling to the meat, basting it with flavor. The exterior becomes charred and crispy, while the interior remains tender and juicy. This isn't just about cooking. It's about imbuing the food with the very essence of fire, a flavor that is both ancient and deeply satisfying. The legalities surrounding foraging were complex and often contentious. While commoners often had traditional rights to gather certain resources on common lands or in royal forests, these rights were frequently challenged or restricted by powerful lords who sought to control all resources. Poaching game, for instance, was a serious crime, punishable by severe penalties, even death. You might sneak into the lord's forest, heart-pounding, hoping to snare a rabbit or find a few wild eggs, knowing the risk but driven by hunger. This constant tension between need and law added another layer of complexity to the act of foraging, an obscure detail about medieval cooking and flavor. While open fires were common, some medieval kitchens also utilized bake ovens, or bread ovens, that were heated by a fire inside, then cleaned out before the food was placed in. These ovens, often made of stone or clay, would retain a deep, even heat, and the residual smoke and char from the fire would impart a subtle, unique flavor to the baked goods and roasted meats cooked within. You might notice a faint, earthy smokiness in your bread that goes beyond just the grain. The psychological impact of relying on wild foods is profound. It fosters a deep sense of connection to the natural world, a primal understanding of its cycles and its hidden bounties. You learn to read the landscape, to anticipate the seasons, to recognize the subtle signs that indicate a valuable find. It's a humbling experience, a constant reminder of your place within the ecosystem and of your utter dependence on its generosity. Historians still debate the extent to which the smoky flavor was universally appreciated, or if it was simply an unavoidable byproduct of the cooking methods. Some argue that medieval palates were accustomed to and even preferred these robust, smoky notes, while others suggest that it was merely tolerated as the cost of a cooked meal. Regardless, you know that the taste of smoke is the taste of your home, your hearth, your daily sustenance as the seasons slowly shift and the first tentative buds of spring begin to appear. The need for extensive foraging might lessen, but the knowledge, the skills, and the deep respect for the wild remain. You carry the memory of those sharp, earthy flavors, those rare bursts of sweetness, and the quiet triumph of finding sustenance where others might see only wilderness. The wild, in its untamed generosity, provided not just calories, but also a unique palette of flavors, a primal spice rack that helped you endure. Here's another joke. My medieval cooking show was called Everything Tastes Like Fire and Fat. It was a hit. You ventured into the wild, discovering the sharp, earthy flavors hidden within the untamed landscape. Now, as you return to the more familiar confines of your kitchen, your attention shifts to another crucial element in the medieval flavor palette, the sharp, often surprising tang of vinegar and its less common, but equally vital, cousin, verjuice. These aren't just condiments. They are powerful agents of flavor, cutting through richness, brightening blandness, and adding a much-needed acidic punch to your meals. The combination of fat and smoke was particularly powerful in preserved meats. Smoked and cured meats, often quite dry and tough, were frequently cooked with additional rendered fat to rehydrate them and add richness. This created a complex flavor profile, the deep saltiness of the cure, the pungent aroma of the smoke, and the comforting richness of the fat. It was a taste that spoke of survival, but also of a certain hearty satisfaction. Imagine the air in your humble dwelling, thick with the scent of simmering pottage, and perhaps a faint, lingering aroma of smoked meat. You're preparing a dish that feels heavy, perhaps a bit cloying, and your palate yearns for something to cut through the richness, to awaken your senses. This is where the magic of acidity comes into play. Even vegetables, when cooked with fat, took on a new dimension. A simple cabbage, boiled with a piece of rendered lard, would become more palatable, its earthy notes softened by the richness. The fat carried the flavors of other ingredients, spreading them throughout the dish, creating a more cohesive and satisfying meal. You reach for a simple earthenware jug, its contents a clear, amber liquid vinegar. This isn't the carefully distilled, precisely flavored vinegar you might find in a modern kitchen. This is likely homemade, perhaps from fermented wine that has gone sour, or from fermented cider. The smell is sharp, pungent, almost eye-watering, a testament to its potency. You pour a small amount into the simmering stew, and immediately a subtle transformation begins. The flavors, once muddled, seem to sharpen, to clarify. The richness is balanced, and a new, tangy dimension emerges. The use of fat also provided a crucial textural element. It made food smoother, more tender, and more enjoyable to eat. In a diet often dominated by tough, fibrous, or dry ingredients, the unctuousness of fat was a welcome relief, adding a luxurious mouthfeel that was otherwise rare. Vinegar was incredibly versatile. It wasn't just for adding to stews. You might use it as a dressing for simple salads made from wild greens in spring, or to pickle vegetables, preserving them while also imparting a sharp, distinctive flavor. Imagine biting into a pickled turnip, its firm texture and intensely sour taste providing a shocking contrast to the soft, earthy pottage. It was also used in marinades for meats, helping to tenderize them and infuse them with a tangy flavor before cooking. A third joke for you. My medieval diet was so good, I once dreamed of a world where food didn't taste like a campfire. Then I woke up hungry. A common historical fact is that vinegar was a staple in medieval kitchens across all social classes. While wine vinegar was prized and often associated with the wealthy, cider vinegar made from fermented apples was common in regions with apple orchards, and malt vinegar from fermented grain was widespread. Its ease of production from spoiled or leftover fermented beverages made it an accessible and invaluable ingredient. You know that if your ale turned sour, it wasn't a waste. It was just becoming vinegar. The knowledge of rendering fat, of controlling a fire for cooking and smoking, was a fundamental skill passed down through generations. You learned to recognize the perfect temperature for rendering, the right type of wood for smoking, and the subtle signs that your food was cooked to perfection. These were not abstract concepts. They were practical skills essential for your family's survival and well-being. Here's a light joke to break the tension. My medieval chef was so obsessed with vinegar, he once tried to pickle his problems. It didn't work, but at least they smelled tangy. As you finish your meal, the lingering taste of fat and smoke on your tongue, you understand that these elements were not just ingredients. They were transformative forces, shaping the very essence of medieval cuisine. They provided the richness, the depth, and the comforting warmth that made your humble meals not just bearable, but truly sustaining. And as you drift off, you might imagine the flickering flames of the hearth, the comforting scent of wood smoke, and the satisfying richness of fat, the deep, primal flavors that truly spiced up the Dark Ages. Now, let's talk about verjuice. This is where things get a little more obscure. Verjuice is the highly acidic juice of unripe grapes, crabapples, or other sour fruits. Before lemons and limes became widely available through extensive trade routes, which largely happened much later in the medieval period or even post-medieval, verjuice was the primary source of strong, sour flavor in European cooking. Imagine a cluster of green, unripe grapes, so tart they make your mouth pucker just looking at them. Their juice, pressed and sometimes lightly fermented, is verjuice. You've journeyed through the Dark Ages kitchen, exploring the humble yet vital ingredients that transformed bland sustenance into something more palatable, more enduring. You've tasted the salt, inhaled the herbs, savored the rare sweetness, and felt the comforting richness of fat and smoke. Now, as our journey nears its end, it's time to reflect on the medieval palate itself, how taste was perceived, how it adapted, and how people in the Dark Ages found satisfaction in flavors that might seem utterly alien to your modern sensibilities. You might see a cook carefully adding a splash of verjuice to a rich meat dish, or to a sauce designed to accompany a fatty fowl. Its sharp, almost biting acidity cuts through the richness, preventing the dish from feeling too heavy or cloying. It provides a bright, clean finish, a sophisticated touch that elevates the meal. Unlike vinegar, which can sometimes be harsh, verjuice often has a more subtle, fruity sourness, adding complexity rather than just a simple tang. Imagine your own taste buds, so accustomed to a world of endless culinary choices, of intense, diverse, and often artificial flavors. Now, strip away those expectations. In the Dark Ages, your palate was fundamentally different. It was shaped by necessity, by scarcity, and by the limited range of ingredients available. What might seem bland or monotonous to you was simply food to them, a source of energy, a bulwark against starvation, and often a moment of profound gratitude. An obscure detail about verjuice is its use in medieval medicine. Beyond its culinary applications, verjuice was also believed to have medicinal properties, often used as a digestive aid or as a remedy for various ailments. Its acidity was thought to help break down food and cleanse the body. You might see a sick family member being given a small spoonful of verjuice, hoping its tartness would bring relief. The primary flavors were robust, salty, earthy, savory, and often a little sour. The pervasive use of salt, as you recall, meant that a baseline brinniness permeated almost everything. This wasn't just a seasoning, it was a fundamental taste profile. Your tongue would be accustomed to it, perhaps even crave it, as it signaled both preservation and sustenance. The earthy notes of root vegetables, grains, and wild edibles were also constant companions, grounding every meal in the soil from which it came. Historians still debate the exact prevalence and regional variations in the use of vinegar versus verjuice. While vinegar was undoubtedly more common and accessible for the general population, verjuice, especially in grape-growing regions, might have been more widely used by those with access to vineyards or orchards. The decline of verjuice in later centuries is often attributed to the increasing availability of citrus fruits and a shift in culinary preferences. The savory depth provided by onions, garlic, and leeks was crucial. These alliums weren't just background notes, they were often the stars of the flavor show, providing a pungent, aromatic foundation that made meals hearty and satisfying. You would appreciate their sharp bite, their ability to transform a simple gruel into something with character. This was the umami of the Dark Ages, derived from humble, local sources. Here's another joke. Why did the medieval cook get a promotion? Because he always had a vinegar-y good idea. A common historical fact is that the medieval concept of flavor was often intertwined with the perceived medicinal properties of food. Herbs and even some spices were valued not just for taste, but for their ability to aid digestion, balance humors, or prevent illness. This meant that certain flavors, even if strong or unusual by modern standards, were consumed for their perceived health benefits, adding another layer to their appreciation. You might eat a bitter herb not just for its taste, but because you believe it will keep you healthy. The importance of sourness in the medieval palate cannot be overstated. In a diet often dominated by rich, fatty meats, especially preserved ones, and bland, starchy grains, acidity provided a crucial counterpoint. It awakened the taste buds, stimulated appetite, and helped to balance the overall flavor profile of a dish. Without these sour agents, meals would have been far heavier and less appealing. Here's a light joke to break the tension. My medieval taste buds were so well adjusted, I could tell the difference between slightly less bland and remarkably bland pottage. Think about the interplay of flavors. A piece of heavily salted meat, perhaps a bit tough from preservation, would be transformed by a sauce made with a generous splash of verjuice. The saltiness would be tempered, the richness cut, and the overall experience would be far more palatable. This wasn't about adding a subtle background note. It was about a direct, impactful flavor intervention. The rare bursts of sweetness, whether from honey or seasonal fruit, were intensely savored. They were not daily occurrences, but precious indulgences, moments of pure delight that stood out against the backdrop of more austere flavors. Imagine the profound pleasure of biting into a crisp, sweet apple after months of dried and salted fare. These moments would be etched into your memory, cherished and longed for. The production of vinegar was often a household affair. Leftover wine, cider, or even beer that had turned sour wasn't discarded. It was allowed to ferment further, transforming into vinegar. This resourcefulness was key to medieval survival, ensuring that nothing went to waste. You might have a dedicated barrel or crock where your sour beverages were stored, slowly transforming into this valuable culinary asset. The smoky essence imparted by cooking over an open fire was also a fundamental part of the medieval palate. Every piece of bread, every roasted meat, every simmering stew carried this primal aroma. It was the scent of the hearth, the smell of warmth and cooked food, a comforting and deeply ingrained flavor that signaled safety and sustenance. You wouldn't think of it as a flavor additive, but as an inherent characteristic of cooked food. A third joke for you. My medieval friend said he was feeling a bit vinegary. I told him he probably just needed more pottage. An obscure detail about medieval taste perception is the likely higher tolerance for bitterness and sourness. With fewer sweet and highly processed foods, medieval palates were probably more attuned to and accepting of the natural bitterness in wild greens, the astringency in certain fruits, and the sharp sourness of fermented foods. These were not flaws to be masked, but inherent qualities to be appreciated as part of the food's character. You might even find a certain satisfaction in the sharp tang of a pickled turnip, or the earthy bitterness of a wild herb. The use of these acidic agents also highlights a fundamental difference in medieval culinary philosophy compared to modern Western cuisine. While modern cooking often emphasizes a balance of sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, medieval cuisine often leaned heavily on bold, contrasting flavors. The sharp tang of vinegar or verjuice was not meant to blend seamlessly but to stand out, to provide a distinct counterpoint. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval people consciously sought out variety in their diet. While modern culinary philosophy often emphasizes diverse flavors and ingredients, medieval diets, particularly for the common person, were often highly repetitive. Did this lead to a constant craving for novelty? Or did palates simply adapt to the limited range, finding comfort and satisfaction in familiar tastes? The answer likely lies in a complex interplay of necessity, cultural norms, and the inherent adaptability of human senses. The knowledge of how to make and use vinegar and verjuice was passed down through generations, a vital part of domestic wisdom. You learned from your elders how to recognize the right stage of fermentation for vinegar, or how to press the unripe fruits for verjuice. These were not skills taught in formal schools, but learned through observation, practice, and the constant need to feed your family. Here's another joke. My medieval friend said he was a foodie. He just meant he could identify 3 different types of mud. As you taste the sharp, clean tang of vinegar in your meal, you appreciate its power. It's not a luxury, not an exotic import, but a humble local ingredient that transforms the ordinary into something more. It's a testament to the ingenuity of people who, with limited resources, found ways to add brightness, balance, and a much-needed kick to their daily sustenance. And as you drift off, you might imagine the crisp, sour taste lingering on your tongue, a reminder of the sharp, vital flavors that spiced up the dark ages. The social context of food also shaped taste. Feasts, though rare, were opportunities for the wealthy to showcase their access to exotic flavors, creating a clear distinction between social classes. For the common person, communal meals, even if simple, fostered a sense of shared experience and solidarity. The taste of food was intertwined with the bonds of community, with the shared effort of survival. You've explored the sharp tang of vinegar and verjuice, adding a crucial acidic counterpoint to your medieval meals. Now, as you consider the very foundations of flavor in your humble kitchen, your attention turns to a trio of pungent, earthy bulbs that are arguably the most ubiquitous and essential spices of the Dark Ages: onions, garlic, and leeks. These aren't exotic imports. They are the bedrock of almost every savory dish, providing a robust, aromatic base that transforms simple ingredients into something truly satisfying. The psychological impact of eating for survival meant that the primary spice was often hunger itself. A truly hungry person finds almost any edible food delicious. The satisfaction came not from complex flavor profiles, but from the simple act of filling your stomach, of staving off the gnawing emptiness. This primal satisfaction transcended mere taste. Imagine the scent that greets you as you enter any medieval kitchen, from the humblest peasant hut to the grandest castle hall. It's the unmistakable aroma of onions, garlic, and leeks simmering gently in a pot, their pungent notes mellowing into a sweet, savory foundation. You might see a basket filled with these bulbs, their papery skins and earthy aroma a constant presence in your daily life. They are cheap, readily available, and incredibly versatile, making them indispensable. A third joke for you. My medieval diet was so clean. I once found a piece of actual dirt in my pottage. It was surprisingly flavorful. You take a rough, gnarled onion, perhaps one that has been stored in your root cellar for months. Its outer layers are dry and brittle, but beneath, the flesh is firm and pungent. You chop it coarsely, your eyes watering from the sharp fumes, and toss it into the simmering pottage. Immediately, the humble stew begins to transform. The onion's sweetness, released by slow cooking, adds a depth that was previously missing, a comforting, familiar warmth. It provides bulk, yes, but more importantly, it provides a foundational savory flavor that is the backbone of so many dishes. Ultimately, the medieval palate was a testament to resilience and adaptation. It was a palate that found flavor in the fundamental, the local, and the necessary. It appreciated the strong, robust notes that provided energy and sustenance, and savored the rare, fleeting moments of sweetness or exoticism. It was a palate that understood the profound connection between food, labor, and survival. Then there's garlic. This isn't just a flavor. It's a force of nature in the medieval kitchen. Its sharp, almost fiery bite mellows into a rich, savory aroma when cooked. You might crush a few cloves of garlic, their sticky juices releasing a powerful scent, and add them to your meat stews, your pottage, or even rub them onto a piece of bread. Garlic was not only prized for its flavor, but also for its perceived medicinal properties, believed to ward off illness and even evil spirits. Its strong flavor was a welcome antidote to the blandness of preserved foods, adding a much-needed punch. As you drift off, the images of the Dark Ages kitchen begin to fade. The lingering tastes on your tongue, salt, smoke, earth, and a hint of something sharp or sweet are not just flavors. They are echoes of a time when every meal was a triumph, every ingredient a gift, and every taste, no matter how humble, a testament to the enduring human spirit. You understand now that spicing up a meal in the Dark Ages was less about adding a dash of something exotic, and more about finding flavor in the very essence of survival. A common historical fact is that allium's onions, garlic, leeks were cultivated and consumed extensively across Europe throughout the medieval period, long before the widespread availability of exotic spices. They were hardy crops, relatively easy to grow and store, making them accessible to virtually all social classes and a foundational component of the diet. You know that no matter how lean the times, you can almost always rely on these pungent bulbs.